Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. This time we're going to be talking about the Terrifier films. And, you know, how could we not talk about Art the Clown?
Oh, he's definitely a modern horror icon.
Isn't he? Like, he just kind of came out of nowhere. But,
He struck a chord with horror fans.
yeah, and like we were talking about before we got started, he's got those classic slasher vibes.
But there's something even more disturbing about art.
There really is.
Mm-hmm.
So to kick things off, let's go back to the beginning,
Okay, the origins.
to the origins. Before the Terrifier films that everyone knows and loves to be terrified by, there were a couple of short films, right?
Right. So Art, the brainchild of Damien Leone, actually first appeared in a short film called The Ninth Circle. This was back in 2008, and it was really our first glimpse into Leone's vision.
Oh, wow.
And it's pretty unsettling.
I bet. So that means Leone had been developing this character, this world.
For years.
For years before the Terrifier films.
Exactly. And then in 2011, Leone released another short film. This one was called Terrifier. And that's where we really see Art's signature look come together.
Yeah.
Black and white clown makeup, that unsettling grin.
Yeah. You know what's so interesting about that look? It's like familiar.
But also very disturbing.
Totally. Like it plays on our fear of clowns, but then it's like
It just twists it into something so sinister.
totally. Because clowns are supposed to be fun, entertaining. They're for kids.
Exactly.
Mm.
But Art subverts all of that. He doesn't talk, he's menacing, and that smile,
Almost like a promise of pain.
yeah.
It's like he's taking what should be comforting, taking childhood fears, and turning them into nightmares.
Now, we also can't forget All Hallows Eve. Now, it's not technically part of the Terrifier franchise, but
Right, it has art in it.
it does feature art, yeah. So it's almost like this sampler platter of depravity before you get to the main course.
So we've had the appetizer. Now let's dig into the entree, shall we?
Let's do it.
So the first Terrifier film came out in 2016, and it really made an impact on the horror world.
I think a lot of that is due to Leone's commitment to using practical effects. The gore in Terrifier, it's pretty intense and realistic.
Yeah.
Definitely not for the faint of heart.
Oh, yeah. Especially that scene.
Oh, you're talking about the hacksaw scene?
Yeah, that scene. It's really become infamous. I've heard stories of people fainting in theaters, walking out, even some getting sick.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that's got to be a sign that Leone knows how to really push those buttons.
Definitely. But under all of the blood and guts, Terrifier starts to set up some really interesting themes that get explored in the sequel.
Yeah, like that final girl trope. We see the first film, but it really becomes important in Terrifier 2.
Yeah, with Sienna.
Sienna, what makes her so interesting is that she's not just a victim.
She's resourceful.
Yeah, and she's a fighter.
Definitely.
And it feels like she represents hope against all of the evil that art brings.
Exactly. And that makes her such a great character. You know, she's not just running around screaming, she's standing up to Art, fighting for her life. It's really a story about the strength of the human spirit.
And you know, we've talked a bit about art and what makes him so unique and scary. I think we need to spend some more time on that.
I think so too. What really sets Art apart from other horror villains is that there's just no motive. There's no revenge or trauma. We don't even know his backstory.
So he's just,
Pure evil.
yeah, it's like he's this force of nature.
Just pure chaos.
Exactly. You never know what he's going to do next.
And he's not bound by any rules that other horror movie villains have.
Yeah, like Jason Voorhees. You know what you're getting.
A machete.
Yeah. But with art, it could be a chainsaw or a rusty pipe or even...
His bare hands.
Yeah. And it's not just killing. He tortures. He plays with his victims
It's almost like he's getting pleasure
from their pain.
from their pain, yeah.
Yeah.
Just a whole other level of disturbing.
It's crazy because in this like weird way, it's like he has a sense of humor about it all.
Like, he's enjoying the show as much as we are.
But for very different reasons.
Yeah.
It's so unsettling. He's not just a monster. He's like
A sadistic clown.
a jester. Yeah. And that's what makes him so disturbing.
It's a really disturbing combo.
So we've got a villain with no motive. He's unpredictable. He's got that terrifying look and then this twisted sense of humor.
I mean, what else could make him so compelling?
Right.
Well, I think it also has to do with the actor who portrays Art.
David Howard Thornton.
Yeah. He brings this physicality to the role that's both mesmerizing and unsettling.
He's like this silent film villain come to life.
He is. All those exaggerated movements and facial expressions.
And then the way he moves.
They're just nightmares.
And the silence is so effective. It adds to the mystery. Like you can't read his mind at all.
You can't predict what he's going to do next.
It's like he's speaking some other language we just don't understand. Language of terror.
And that's what makes him so effective, I think.
He's tapping into some primal fear.
that we can't even really articulate.
It's so interesting. Art is terrifying, but he's also really compelling.
He is. There's something about his violence, his dark humor,
Yeah, it draws you in.
even though it's repulsive.
It's like watching a car crash.
Oh, you know it's going to be horrible, but...
But you can't look away.
And I think there's a part of all of us that really enjoys the spectacle of it all.
Absolutely. There's a morbid curiosity.
Yeah. We're fascinated by the darkness, the things that scare us.
And art just embodies all of that.
He's a monster, like a creature from a nightmare come to life.
So I think we've covered art's origins and what makes him so unique. But there's still a lot more to unpack in this franchise, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. We haven't even talked about the themes and the style of the films and what they mean for the horror genre.
So that's where we'll pick things up in part 2.
Welcome back to our deep dive on the Terrifier films.
Man, after that last discussion, my heart rate is still a little high.
I know, right? Art really gets under your skin.
He really does. So where do we go from here?
Well, I think it's important to look at where Terrifier sits in the larger horror landscape.
Okay, so zoom out for me a little.
So, on one hand, Terrifier is like a total throwback to those 80s slasher films.
Like Friday the 13th, Halloween.
Exactly. It has that rawness, that brutality.
You're right, I get those vibes from it too. But it's not just a copycat, is it?
Not at all. Terrifier is also a product of modern horror, which has this trend toward more extreme content.
It's like people aren't scared by jump scares anymore.
No, they want something that really pushes the limits.
Yeah, something intense and unforgettable.
And Terrifier definitely delivers that. Leone isn't afraid to show the gore, but...
But there's more to it than that.
Right, it's not just about shock value.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. If it was just gore for gore's sake, it wouldn't work.
And this ties into the resurgence of practical effects in horror.
There's something about practical effects. CGI blood just doesn't look real.
Exactly. It's like the difference between watching a staged fight and a real one. Practical effects make it feel so real.
Like you're not just watching it, you're experiencing it.
And practical effects have such a rich history in horror, you know?
Oh yeah, from like Lon Chaney to Tom Savini.
Right. And Leone is part of that tradition. He's keeping that in-your-face horror alive.
Wow, that's so interesting. So we've got this mix of classic slasher and extreme horror, plus the practical effects. It's no wonder Terrifier has resonated with people.
It's a really interesting mix, that's for sure. And I think Terrifier has had a cultural impact, too. I think it says something about our relationship with horror.
Yeah, that fascination with the dark side of humanity. Like, why are we drawn to something like Art the Clown?
It's such a good question. Maybe it's a kind of morbid curiosity.
Yeah, like we want to confront these fears, but in a safe way.
Right. If we can watch art on screen, then maybe we can deal with the darkness in real life.
Maybe the way of processing these things, these fears.
I think there's some catharsis there.
Totally. And the Terrifier fans are so passionate. It's like they've found something.
A community.
Yeah. And they see something in art.
Yeah. That reflects their interest in the macabre.
They dress up like him at conventions. It's like...
It's almost like a cult following.
Yeah, but in a good way. They're celebrating something that a lot of people find taboo.
There's a real sense of rebellion there. Like Terrifier is rejecting all those safe PG-13 horror films.
Yeah, Terrifier's the real deal.
They want to be challenged, disturbed, even traumatized.
And Leone gives them exactly that. He pushes buttons, crosses lines.
He doesn't care about making people uncomfortable.
I mean, in a world that often feels too safe, that's kind of refreshing.
Totally. It's a reminder that horror can still shock us.
Okay, so let's go back to Art. Why does he work so well as a horror villain?
I think part of it is how simple he is. Art's not a complex character.
Right, he's not some tragic figure.
No, he's just evil.
Yeah, like he's just a force of nature.
Exactly. You can't reason with him, he just is.
And that makes him even scarier.
It does. Because you never know what he's going to do next. He's unpredictable.
He's not like other horror villains where you can guess what's coming.
And he seems to enjoy it all so much.
There's a real sadistic glee to Art.
It's like he's playing a game.
And we're the players.
Exactly. And he's the one who's in control. And that makes him so disturbing.
So it's the primal fear, the unpredictability, plus that sadistic sense of humor and the terrifying design.
Oh, and we can't forget David Howard Thornton's performance as Art.
He's so good. That physicality he brings to the role, it's creepy.
And he doesn't even have to speak to be menacing.
It's true. The silence just adds to the mystery.
You can't understand his motivations at all.
He's a blank slate for our own fears.
I think one thing we haven't talked about yet is the humor in Terrifier.
Oh, you're so right. As disturbing as it is, there are times when it's funny.
Yeah, that dark humor.
It's like Leone's playing with our expectations.
He's giving us all this horror, all this violence, and
It
then,
makes you laugh.
yeah, it's like he's saying, this is messed up, but it's also funny, right?
And that's what makes it so unsettling.
Yeah.
Makes you question your own sense
Yeah.
of humor.
Exactly. And I think that's a sign of great horror, making you laugh and be terrified at the same time.
It's a reminder that horror can be more than just jump scares and gore. It can be funny and make you think.
And Terrifier definitely does that. It stays with you.
And we haven't even talked about Terrifier 2.
Which takes everything to a whole other level.
So join us for part 3 as we continue our deep dive into Terrifier.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. We are finishing up our deep dive into the Terrifier films, and, well, let's just say it's been a wild ride.
It has been a pretty intense journey.
Art the Clown has really gotten under my skin, and I have a feeling he's going to be with me for a while.
He's definitely hard to forget.
Mm-hmm.
So I think to wrap things up, we should consider the bigger picture.
Okay, yeah, so let's zoom out from the gore and the scares for a minute.
And think about what Terrifier's success says about the state of horror today.
So what do you think it means? Like, what's the message?
Well, I think it shows that there's a real desire for horror that pushes the boundaries.
You know, horror that doesn't hold back. Exactly. Audiences are tired of the same old formulas, the jump scares, the predictable plots. They want something new.
Something that really gets under their skin.
Yeah, something visceral, something that confronts them with the real darkness of the world.
And Terrifier really does that.
It doesn't shy away from anything. It shows the ugliness of humanity.
It's a wake-up call almost.
It is. It reminds us that the world can be a scary, unpredictable place.
But you know what's interesting? Even with all that darkness, Terrifier still offers a glimmer of hope.
Yeah, it does. Think about Sienna in Terrifier 2.
Oh, right, yeah, Sienna.
She's going through hell, facing this unimaginable terror.
But she doesn't give up.
No, she fights back.
Yeah, she's resourceful, she's strong. It's like she represents...
The resilience of the human spirit.
Yes, exactly. Even in the face of pure evil, there's still hope. There's still a reason to keep fighting.
I think that's one of the most powerful messages of the film.
You know, that message of hope actually makes the horror even more impactful.
Yeah.
It's not just about shock value. It's about exploring what it means to be human.
Exactly. Terrifier is more than just a gore fest. It's about our capacity for good and evil.
And it makes us ask some tough questions about ourselves.
Right. Like, what is evil? Does pure evil, like art, really exist in the world?
That's a question that I've been thinking about a lot. Is art just a figment of our imagination, or is he a reflection of something real, something dark that's lurking out there?
I don't know the answer to that.
I don't either.
But I think it's something we all have to grapple with. The horror that really gets to us, the horror that stays with us, is the horror we believe in.
The horror that speaks to our deepest fears.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up our deep dive, I want to challenge everyone listening. If you're brave enough, seek out the Terrifier films. See Art the Clown for yourself. And then ask yourself that question.
Is he just a monster in a movie? Or is he something more?
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Until next time, horror fans, keep exploring the darkness, but maybe keep a nightlight on just in case it